The fork hit my plate with a sound that made everyone freeze. My grandfather's face turned the color of old brick as he stared at me across the dining table. "You're quitting law school for paintings." His voice boomed through the silent room, making my younger cousins shrink in their chairs. 20 pairs of eyes turned to watch my humiliation. "It's what I love, grandfather. I want to be an artist." He laughed, sharp and cruel. "An artist? You're a disgrace to this family." He pulled out the tuition check he'd promised me and tore it cleanly in half. The pieces fluttered onto my untouched dinner like confetti at a funeral. My father started to speak, but my grandfather cut him off. "No, no lawyer in this family bears our name in shame. She made her choice." He threw his napkin on the table and walked out. The room stayed silent. 20 pairs of eyes still watched me. I stood slowly, my hands trembling, and left the dining room. Behind me, I heard whispers starting, felt judgment settling over the family like fog. My name is Arya Holt. I'm 21 years old, and that night my family decided my worth was measured in career choices I didn't want. I packed my bedroom in silence while relatives continued dinner downstairs. One suitcase held clothes. Another held art supplies, 3 worn brushes, and a sketchbook full of half-finished dreams I'd hidden for years. My mother found me in the hallway. "Where will you go?" "Somewhere I can breathe." She handed me an envelope with $500 inside. "This is all I can give you without him knowing." I hugged her, feeling her tears against my shoulder. When I pulled away, I saw her glance nervously toward the stairs. Even in this moment, his disapproval controlled her. I left through the back door, loading my bags into my old car. The house behind me glowed with warm light, full of people who'd chosen tradition over understanding. I drove away without looking back, my hands steady on the wheel, my heart hammering. Freedom felt terrifying and necessary. My mother met me at the door the next morning when I returned for forgotten items. "Please, Arya, just go back next semester. He's old-fashioned, but he loves you." I looked at the woman who'd spent 40 years bending to my grandfather's will. "Then maybe I'm the future he's afraid of." She flinched. Behind her, I could see family photos lining the hallway. Lawyers, judges, prosecutors, 3 generations of Holts serving justice, not one artist among them. "He'll never forgive this," my mother whispered. "I know." I picked up my art books. "But maybe I'll forgive myself." The door closed with a soft click that sounded like finality. I stood staring at the brass nameplate that read Judge Theodore Holt. Then I walked to my car and drove to the tiny studio apartment I'd found, where the walls were bare and the future was uncertain, but at least it was mine to paint. I couldn't afford art school. My grandfather's torn check had been my only hope for formal training, and I refused to take loans that would chain me to debt while proving him right about my impracticality. So I learned from library books and YouTube videos, painting on whatever surfaces I could afford. Cardboard became my canvas. Old bedsheets stretched over thrift store frames served as my gallery walls. I worked 3 part-time jobs and painted through exhaustion, sleeping beside wet canvases in my cramped studio, breathing turpentine and determination. My first real painting took 2 weeks. A landscape of mountains at sunset, colors bleeding together in ways that felt both accidental and perfect. I posted it online, priced at $50, expecting nothing. It sold within an hour. The buyer, a woman named Helena, sent a message with her payment. "This reminds me of home. Thank you for making something beautiful." I cried holding that $50 bill, not because of the money, but because someone, somewhere, had seen value in what I created. My grandfather had called me worthless. A stranger had called me an artist. I knew which voice I needed to believe. That night, I started my second painting, my hands steadier, my doubt a little quieter. 3 months after I left, my phone rang with my grandfather's number. I almost didn't answer. When I finally did, his voice thundered through the speaker, unchanged and unforgiving. "Your mother tells me you're still wasting your time with this art nonsense." I sat on my apartment floor, surrounded by works in progress, paint staining my fingers. "It's not nonsense to me." He laughed, that same cruel sound from the dinner table. "When you fail, and you will fail, Arya, don't come back asking for help. You made your bed, sleep in it." My throat tightened, but I kept my voice steady. "I wasn't planning to come back." Silence stretched between us, heavy with everything unsaid. Then he spoke again, his tone colder than before. "You're no longer part of this family. I hope your paintings keep you warm at night." The line went dead. I sat there holding my phone, feeling the weight of his rejection settle into my bones. Then I did something unexpected. I saved the voicemail, storing his words like ammunition. Someday, I promised myself I'd prove him wrong. Not for him. For me. I went back to painting, his voice echoing in my head, fueling every brushstroke. Rejection, I was learning, could be transformed into power. 2 years passed. I wasn't invited to my cousin Nathan's law school graduation party. I found out about it from social media, scrolling through photos of my family celebrating at the country club I'd attended 100 times as a child. My grandfather stood at the center of every picture, his hand proudly on Nathan's shoulder, his smile genuine in ways I'd never seen directed at me. The caption read, "Proud to see another lawyer join the family legacy." Comments poured in from relatives, colleagues, family, friends. Everyone celebrating Nathan's success, everyone reinforcing that this path, this career, was the only one worth taking. I stared at one photo for a long time. My grandfather, Nathan, my parents, my aunts and uncles. Everyone I'd grown up with, gathered together, united in their approval. Not one of them had called me. Not one had asked how I was. I closed the app and looked around my studio. 6 finished paintings leaned against the walls. A commission for a local coffee shop sat drying on my easel. Bills were paid. Rent was covered. I was surviving, slowly building something. They had their celebrations. I had mine. I went back to painting, the ache of exclusion gradually transforming into fierce determination. Their approval wasn't mine to chase anymore. My first real gallery exhibit happened on a rainy Tuesday night. The venue was small, a converted warehouse space that charged emerging artists a modest fee to display their work. 5 people showed up, not counting the gallery owner. 2 were my coworkers from the coffee shop where I worked mornings. One was Helena, the woman who'd bought my first painting. I stood in the corner, watching strangers glance at my work with polite interest before moving on. My grandfather's voice played in my head like a recording. "No one pays for feelings on a canvas." Then a man in an expensive coat stopped in front of my largest piece, a stormy seascape I'd painted during a particularly difficult week. He studied it for several minutes, his expression thoughtful. Finally, he turned to the gallery owner. "I'll take this one." My heart stopped. He approached me, extending his hand. "You paint like someone with something to prove." I managed a smile. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to people who have had something to prove themselves." He paid cash and left with the painting carefully wrapped. I stood there, stunned, holding a check that would cover 3 months of rent, 5 people, 1 sale. But it was enough to keep going. Enough to prove that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't failing after all. A local art critic destroyed me in print. I found the review in the weekly paper, my hands shaking as I read the words. "Amateur effort, lacks technical discipline and coherent vision. Miss Holt mistakes emotion for artistry." The article was small, buried in the arts section, but every word felt like a knife. I called in sick to work and spent the day in bed, the newspaper on my floor, doubt consuming me. My grandfather had been right. The critic confirmed what my family already believed. I was deluding myself, playing at being an artist when I had no real talent. For 3 days, I didn't paint. I stared at my canvases, seeing only flaws, only proof of my inadequacy. Then on the 4th day, I picked up the review and read it again. This time, anger replaced despair. I pinned the article to my wall and grabbed a tube of red paint. Under the critic's words, I wrote in bold letters, "Watch me." That became my manifesto. Every morning, I woke up and read those words. Every night before bed, I read them again. The critic's doubt became fuel. My grandfather's rejection became motivation. I painted with renewed fury, pouring everything into my work. Proving them wrong became my obsession. And slowly, painfully, I got better. For my grandfather's 80th birthday, I sent a card. Nothing elaborate, just a simple message. "Happy birthday, grandfather, I hope you're well. Love, Arya." I addressed it carefully, choosing my words to be neutral, non-threatening. Maybe enough time had passed. Maybe he'd softened. Maybe we could find some small bridge back to each other. The card came back 3 weeks later. "Return to sender" stamped across my handwriting in angry red ink. He hadn't even opened it. I held the returned envelope in my apartment, feeling a door slam shut that I hadn't realized I'd still been holding open. My mother called that night, her voice apologetic. "He saw your name on the envelope and refused to touch it. I'm sorry, sweetheart." "It's okay, Mom." "It's not okay, but he's stubborn." "I know." I hung up and looked at the unopened card. Then I opened it myself, reading the words I'd written. They sounded naive now, hopeful in a way that embarrassed me. I threw the card away and went back to my easel. I was done reaching out, done hopping for reconciliation. From now on, I would focus only on the work, only on becoming undeniable. If he wouldn't acknowledge me, I'd make it impossible for the world to ignore me. At a downtown coffee shop, sketching between shifts, a stranger noticed my work. He leaned over, studying my drawing of the barista behind the counter. "You've got a good eye for movement." I looked up, surprised. He was older, maybe 50, with gray in his beard and paint stains on his jacket. "Thank you." We started talking. His name was Vincent, and he owned a small gallery 3 blocks away. He asked to see more of my work, so I showed him photos on my phone, my heart pounding. "These are raw, but there's something there," he said after scrolling through dozens of images. "I'm putting together a group show next month. New voices, emerging artists. You interested?" I nearly dropped my phone. Seriously, but you'll need at least 5 finished pieces. Can you do that?" I nodded, already calculating how many sleepless nights that would require. "I can do that." He handed me his card. "Email me by next Friday." For the next 3 weeks, I painted like my life depended on it. I called in sick to work. I survived on coffee and instant noodles. My hands blistered from holding brushes, but I finished 6 pieces, each one better than anything I'd created before. The group show opened on a Saturday. Every single one of my paintings sold. I stood in Vincent's gallery, watching strangers admire my work, and felt something shift inside me. This was real. I was actually doing it. A journalist from the local arts magazine interviewed me after the show. She was young, eager, scribbling notes as I talked about my influences and process. Then she asked the question that changed everything. "Who inspired your passion for art?" I paused, thinking about my grandfather's voice, the torn check, the returned birthday card, about every moment of rejection that had pushed me to prove I was more than their limited vision of success. I smiled. "Rejection." She looked up from her notes. "Can you explain that? When everyone tells you that you can't do something, that you're making a mistake, that you'll fail, you have 2 choices. You can believe them or you can prove them wrong. Rejection taught me to choose myself." The article ran the following week. That single quote, "Rejection inspired my passion," went viral in local art circles. People shared it online, commented on it, debated what it meant to build a career from opposition. My grandfather read it. My aunt called to tell me he'd thrown the magazine across his study, his face purple with rage. "He said you're embarrassing the family again, making him look like some villain in your little artist story." I laughed, really laughed for the first time in years. "Good, maybe he'll finally notice I exist." After I hung up, I felt lighter. His anger meant he was paying attention. And attention, even negative attention, meant I was becoming impossible to ignore. 4 years after leaving home, I applied for a spot in a prestigious national exhibition. Artists from across the country submitted portfolios. The competition was fierce, the selection committee notoriously difficult. I spent weeks preparing my application, choosing my strongest pieces, writing and rewriting my artist's statement. I poured everything into that submission, seeing it as validation that I'd truly made it. The rejection letter arrived on a Tuesday. "While we appreciate your submission, your work does not align with our current curatorial vision." I read it 3 times, each word a small death. For a moment, my grandfather's voice returned, louder than ever. "Told you this would happen." I sat on my apartment floor, the rejection letter in my lap, and cried. Not polite tears, but ugly, gasping sobs that came from somewhere deep and wounded. Every doubt I'd suppressed came flooding back. Maybe I wasn't good enough. Maybe I'd never be good enough. Then through the tears, I felt something else rising. Anger, defiance, stubborn, burning determination. I went to my easel and started painting. No plan, no sketch, just raw emotion translated to canvas. I painted my grandfather's face, twisted in judgment. I painted the dinner table, the torn check, the shame. I painted my own reflection, caught between who I was supposed to be and who I'd chosen to become. The piece took 3 days. When I finished, I stood back, stunned by what I'd created. It was brutal, honest, painful. I named it Disgrace. I photographed Disgrace and posted it online without overthinking. Just the image and the title, no explanation. Within hours, comments started appearing. By the next morning, the post had been shared thousands of times. People wrote paragraphs about what the painting meant to them. "This is what generational pain looks like. I feel this in my bones. Every family has someone they call a disgrace for choosing themselves." Art blogs picked it up. Local news mentioned it. Gallery owners started emailing me, asking if the piece was for sale. I sat at my laptop, watching numbers climb, reading strangers' stories about their own rejections and rebellions. My phone rang constantly. My inbox overflowed. And suddenly, Disgrace, the painting I'd created from my deepest hurt, was the thing people knew me for. Vincent called, excited. "Do you understand what's happening? You just went viral." I didn't, not really. I just painted my truth, and somehow it had resonated with thousands of people who carried their own versions of shame. A week later, an email arrived from the Westfield Contemporary Art Museum. They were planning an exhibition about rebellion, identity, and breaking from tradition. They wanted my work. Specifically, they wanted Disgrace. I read the email 7 times before I believed it was real. This was it, the validation I'd been chasing for 5 years. And it was happening, because I'd finally stopped trying to please anyone but myself. 6 years after leaving home, I returned for the exhibition opening. My parents picked me up from the airport, the drive tense with unspoken questions. "He doesn't know you're the featured artist," my mother whispered as we approached the museum. "He thinks it's just a local art show." I looked at her, at the familiar worry lines around her eyes. "Then I guess tonight will be educational." The museum glowed against the evening sky, modern and imposing. My stomach churned with nerves and anticipation. Inside, workers were making final adjustments to the lighting, and I could see my paintings hanging on white walls under perfect spotlights. The exhibition director, a woman named Teresa, greeted me warmly. "We've had incredible advance interest. People are very excited about your story." My story. The one about choosing passion over prestige, about surviving rejection, about turning pain into art. It was displayed on the walls around us, my entire journey made visible. My mother stood at a distance, looking at the paintings with an expression I couldn't read. When she finally spoke, her voice was thick. "You've been carrying all of this alone," I nodded, "because I had to." She hugged me then, really hugged me, maybe for the first time since I'd left. "I'm sorry I wasn't braver." "You're here now," I said. "That's enough." My cousin Nathan sent me a message as I was getting ready for the opening. We hadn't spoken in 6 years, not since his graduation party where I hadn't been invited. The message was short, polite, and tinged with warning. "Grandfather plans to attend tonight. Several of his colleagues from the courthouse will be there. Please don't make it awkward." I stared at my phone, anger simmering. After everything, after 6 years of silence, his concern was about me making things awkward. Not about how I'd survived, not about reconciliation, just about maintaining appearances. I typed back carefully. "I won't make anything awkward. The art will handle that." He didn't respond. I finished getting ready, choosing my clothes carefully. Simple black dress, minimal jewelry. I wanted the focus on the work, not on me. When I arrived at the museum, it was already filling with people. Art collectors in expensive clothes, critics with notebooks, students from the local university. And somewhere in that crowd would be my grandfather, expecting a pleasant evening of looking at art he'd probably dismiss. He had no idea what he was walking into. Teresa found me backstage. "Ready?" I nodded, though my hands were shaking. "As ready as I'll ever be. Your family, they'll be surprised." She smiled, understanding more than I'd said. "Good art should surprise people. That's the whole point." I stood hidden in a corner as guests arrived. People stopped in front of my paintings, murmuring to each other. "She's the local girl who left law school. She actually made it work." My parents arrived, looking uncomfortable. Then I saw him. My grandfather entered, his cane tapping against marble floors. He was surrounded by colleagues, other judges, and lawyers. He looked older than I remembered, more fragile, but his expression was the same. Stern, judgmental, certain of his rightness. They moved through the gallery slowly. My grandfather barely glanced at most pieces, clearly here out of obligation. Then they turned the corner into the main exhibition space, and stopped. The centerpiece dominated the far wall. Disgrace, enlarged to 6 feet tall, hung under perfect lighting. The dinner table, the torn check, and my grandfather's face captured mid-yell, veins standing out in his neck. The painting was unmistakable. Beneath it, a brass plaque read, "Disgrace, dedicated to those who confuse control with love." My grandfather stood frozen, staring at his own image rendered in oil and pain. His colleagues gathered around him, exchanging glances. The gallery went quiet. Someone whispered, "Isn't that Judge Whitmore?" My grandfather's hand tightened on his cane. His face went pale, then flushed dark red. For the first time in my life, I saw him speechless. He turned slowly, scanning the gallery, looking for me. His eyes finally found mine across the crowded room. Recognition hit him like a physical blow. Around us, murmurs spread as people connected the dots. My grandfather moved toward me through the crowd. People parted to let him through, sensing confrontation. I stood my ground. He stopped 3 feet away. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet. "Arya, grandfather." We faced each other across 6 years of silence. He looked at the painting again, then back at me. "You made me the villain." I took a breath. "No, grandfather, you painted that picture yourself. I just showed the world the colors." His face twisted. "I tried to protect you. You tried to control me. There's a difference." My mother appeared at my side. "You humiliated me," my grandfather said, gesturing at the painting. "In front of everyone." "You humiliated me first," I replied calmly. "The difference is, I turned my pain into something beautiful. What did you create from yours?" The silence stretched. My grandfather's mouth worked, searching for words. "I could have helped you. You could have been someone." "I am someone." I gestured at the walls, "just not the someone you wanted." He looked around at the crowd watching us, at the undeniable proof that I'd built something without him. "This isn't forgiveness," I said gently. "I'm here because I finally stopped needing your permission to exist." He flinched. "I don't hate you, grandfather. I feel sorry for you. You had a granddaughter who loved you, who wanted your approval, but you couldn't see past your own vision." Around us, I heard people start to applaud softly. "I hope someday you understand," I continued. "But I don't need you to, not anymore." I turned and walked toward the stage. Behind me, my grandfather stood alone, his reflection trapped forever in the painting. He'd called me a disgrace. Tonight, I'd shown the world exactly what that disgrace had created. My speech was short and from the heart. I talked about the courage it takes to choose yourself over expectation, about the pain of rejection and the power of transformation. The audience listened in complete silence. When I finished, the applause was thunderous. People stood, clapping, some wiping their eyes. My mother cried openly. Through the crowd, I could see my grandfather near the exit, looking small suddenly, diminished. After the speech, people swarmed me. Gallery owners wanted to represent me. Museums wanted shows. Art collectors wanted commissions. Vincent found me in the chaos, beaming. "You did it, kid." "We did it," I corrected. My phone buzzed with messages. Articles already being written. Social media exploding with photos. The world was paying attention. And this time, it wasn't because I was a disappointment. It was because I'd transformed that disappointment into art. The following weeks were a blur. The exhibition became the most attended show in the museum's history. Art journals wrote features. Podcasts requested interviews. Universities invited me to speak. My grandfather didn't contact me, but I heard he'd become quieter, more withdrawn. Nathan called, surprisingly. I didn't understand, but after seeing the exhibition, I get it now. "Thank you for saying that." "He's not doing well." The humiliation hit him hard. I felt a pang but didn't let it control me. I didn't create that work to hurt him. I created it to heal myself. After we hung up, I sat in my studio. The story everyone knew was about my grandfather, about rejection and triumph. But the real story was simpler. A girl who chose to paint. That choice had cost me everything, but it had given me myself. 6 months later, my mother called with news. "Your grandfather had a stroke, a small one, but it shook him. He asked for you." I sat down, processing this. "What did you tell him?" "That I'd ask you. No pressure, sweetheart." I thought about it for days. Finally, I went. The hospital room was quiet. My grandfather looked older, smaller against white sheets. "Arya," his voice was weak. "You came." I pulled a chair close. "Mom said you asked for me." He nodded slowly. "I've been thinking. About that painting, about what you said. I was wrong." 2 words that must have cost him everything. "I tried to make you into something you weren't. I thought I was protecting you, but I was just protecting my own vision." Tears rolled down his weathered cheeks. "You were always so talented, but I was afraid talent wasn't enough. I thought law would give you security." "You didn't trust me to choose my own path," I said quietly. "No, I didn't, and I lost you because of it." He reached for my hand. "Can you forgive an old fool?" I looked at him. Forgiveness wasn't simple. "I don't know yet," I answered honestly. "But I'm willing to try if you're willing to actually see me now." He nodded. "Tell me about your art." "Really tell me, I want to understand." So I did. He listened, really listened, asking questions. It wasn't redemption, but it was a start. When I left, my mother walked me to my car. "Thank you for coming." She hugged me. "I'm proud of you for all of it." 1 year later, the museum contacted me about making the show permanent. Disgrace would become part of their permanent collection. I stood in the gallery as they installed the new plaque. "From Disgrace to Legacy, the journey of Arya Holt." This painting represents the courage to choose authenticity over approval and the transformative power of turning pain into art. My grandfather came to the installation ceremony. He walked slowly, but he came. He stood in front of the painting for a long time. Then he turned to me. "I'll never stop being sorry for this moment." "I know," I stood beside him, "but this moment also made me who I am." "You would have been strong anyway," he said quietly. "I just couldn't see it." During my speech, I talked about the unexpected gift of rejection. My grandfather sat in the front row, tears streaming down his face. It wasn't absolution, but it was acknowledgement. 2 years after everything changed, I returned to the museum on a quiet afternoon. Children sat on the gallery floor, sketching my paintings for an art class. I watched them work, these kids who didn't know about the scared 21-year-old who'd packed everything and driven into uncertainty. They only knew the successful artist whose story inspired people. The plaque had been updated to include my recent achievements: solo shows in major cities, pieces in permanent collections. A teaching position at the very art school I couldn't afford years ago. A little girl approached me shyly. "Are you the artist?" I smiled. "I am. My dad says you're brave, that you chose what you loved even when people said you shouldn't." "Your dad's right, it was the hardest thing I ever did." She considered this seriously. "But you're happy now." I looked around the gallery at the evidence of a life built from rubble. "Yes," I said, "I'm happy now." I stayed a while longer, watching new generations encounter my story. Before I left, I paused one final time in front of Disgrace. He called me a disgrace. He was right. I disgraced the silence he built and turned it into art that speaks louder than his judgment ever could. I walked out into afternoon sunshine, ready to create whatever came next. The past was memorialized on museum walls. The future stretched ahead. Blank as a fresh canvas, waiting.